Welcome to a special edition of Matchups Breakdown as we get ready for the Professional Fighters League World Championship event on New Year's Eve from the Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden. I'm Brendan GLASHEEN. We're here to get you ready for the event and DraftKings' new free-to-play PFL 2018 World Championship Pick'em contest. Win up to $20,000 by answering 4 simple questions about each of the 6 PFL championship matches. Who will win? What will be the method of victory? In what round will the fight end? And in what time within that round will the fight end? Users rack up points based on how many they get correct. And here to help us figure out the answers to those questions is former UFC heavyweight champion and current PFL analyst, Bas Rutten. Welcome to this special PFL edition of Matchups Breakdown, Bas. This is shaping up to be a historic night at MSG with $10 million in prize money on the line as 6 championship fights go down in the Decagon. Bas, quick opening thought before we get started?
Well, I think it's going to be a war. Think about it. 6 guys have a chance to win $1 million. And again, think about this as well. On December 31st, 6 fighters will become a millionaire. That's a pretty cool thing. I could never say that in my career, that I became a millionaire with in one night, but man, that will be an awesome thing. So yes, I truly believe these guys are gonna go for it.
I could never say that either. So let's just get started with the PFL Middleweight Championship. Top-seeded Abus Magomedov will battle number 2 seed Lewis Taylor. Magomedov, representing Germany by way of Dagestan, holds a career record of 22-3-1, was unbeaten in 4 PFL fights this season. He's listed as a wrestler, but don't sleep on his striking game. 13 career knockouts, including 2 first-round KOs in the PFL. He'll face Taylor, who is the oldest middleweight in the PFL at 39 years old, a former wrestling coach and collegiate wrestler at Eastern Illinois. Taylor is 17-4-1, including 3-0-1 in the PFL. So, Bas, what's it going to take for Magomedov to come out on top?
Well, first of all, Magomedov is undefeated in his last 10 fights as well. Only 2 of those fights went to a decision. 5 knockouts, 3 submissions. So yes, like you said, do not sleep on his striking game. Now, Abus needs to use his reach advantage that he has, and he needs to keep Taylor outside of his strikes and pick him apart. And guess what? That is one of Abus's best skills. He's really good with that. Now, Taylor knows this, of course. So Magomedov also has to make sure that he's ready to move to the sides, because Taylor probably is going to bull rush him, storm forward right from the start. I believe and when you have great wrestling skills, you should use those wrestling skills as well. They always say that Magomedov is a wrestler, but he likes to strike, he likes to stand, he likes to please the audience. But his wrestling skills are there. So if you have them, use them. Shoot for some takedowns, even fake a few takedowns if you want to, just to get inside the head of Taylor. Because this way, Taylor has to start guessing, is this going to be a takedown or is it going to be a striking attack? And once that happens, you can set him up by simply faking a takedown, which will make him drop his hands and then come over the top with strikes. So put all those things together, great footwork, moving to the sides, never backwards, head movement. That's what Magomedov needs to do.
What's the key for Taylor to walk out with the middleweight title?
Well, he needs to press the action. This is very important because he has the reach disadvantage, and he will be the strongest when he's on close range. And sometimes fans ask me, why is that, Bas? Why will he have more power? Well, any strike, the more it travels, the longer it travels, the more time it has to pick up speed and power. So if you're close by and you have the reach disadvantage, your strikes can actually travel longer to the opponent's targets than the opponent to you, and that's why your striking will be harder. Now, of course, don't think that it's going to be a huge difference, because everybody has power, but what it also will do is that he will put him close to Magomedov. And if he's close to Magomedov, Magomedov cannot keep him on the outside of his strikes. Now back to this fight. With this game plan, of course, he needs a lot of stamina because he needs to come forward nonstop. Another great thing about this game plan is, I'm going to explain this because we'll come back into other fights as well, is that when you have a great striker and push him backwards, it's very hard for that fighter to strike with power because he cannot use the floor. And often fans ask me, why? What do you mean with using the floor? Well, the power comes from the floor for any striker, for any great striker. It's like almost when you stand on one leg and you try to push somebody away, it's not going to happen, right? You're pushing yourself backwards. But if you put your foot on the ground, back straight, now you can use the floor in order to push off, and that's how you put your body weight into a punch. Now, I'm not saying that you can't knock somebody out with only an arm punch. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that if you want the perfect punch and you want to put body weight in that punch, you have to use the floor. So once you get pushed backwards, it's going to be very hard. Like I said, again, I explained this because we'll come back in more fights, and this way I have it explained that people know. Now, also with Taylor, he's got wrestling skills, and we've seen him use that a lot against the Shields, for instance. No, against another opponent. I'm mixing two guys up. But anyway, he went a lot for takedowns. I do that the same thing because, you know, if you get in Magomedov's head, same thing as he can do with you, what is it going to be? Is it going to be a takedown or is it going to be a striking attack? So, can he knock Magomedov out? I do think he can because he does have that power. But guess what? Magomedov has never been stopped before by knockout in his career, so it's going to be hard.
Bas, moving on to the PFL Featherweight Championship. #1 seed Super Steven SILER takes on #2 seed Lance the Party Palmer. As top seed, SILER made it to the final on the strength of his submission game. 32 career wins are the most among PFL featherweights. His opponent, Lance Palmer, actually defeated SILER in 2017, pulling out a unanimous decision. The four-time All-American wrestler at Ohio State, 4-0 in the PFL, and his strength is also the ground game, as he got 2 submission wins during the regular season. So, Bas, what is SILER's best chance to flip the script and beat Palmer in this rematch?
Well, SILER is the comeback kid, right? Every time when you think the fight is over, he pulls out some magic, it looks like, and then he wins by way of submission, just like he did with his first fight of the season against Idrisov. Idrisov is doing really well. We all thought that actually the fight was going to be over, but SILER, he kept his eye on the referee, and he was giving the thumbs up, saying, hey, I'm okay, so don't worry about it. He slapped on the triangle choke, and he won the fight. Now, in this fight, preferably, he cannot be taken down. It's going to be hard, you know, because he's fighting freaking Lance Palmer. Now, if there's a takedown, it should come from SILER, and he needs to be on top, because even though SILER is great on his back, Palmer's submission game is just really good, and there are way more options if you are on top. You also can use ground and pound. Now, if I would be SILER, I would try to stand with Palmer. Just play the striking game, and when he sees an opening, then try to go for a takedown. But again, Palmer needs to be off guard for that because he's that unbelievable, you mentioned, 4-time All-American wrestler. But, you know, you never know. If a strike lands, we saw this against really great wrestlers, somebody gets dazed, that could be the spot for you to go for a takedown. Now, if Palmer gets SILER on the ground and SILER is on his back, he needs to keep on working from the bottom like he always does, and he needs to outwork Palmer and pray that the judges are good judges and give points for that, even when he's not finishing Palmer. It's always funny to me, you know, you have these, when you have the striking game, you have 2 strikers on the feet and they're fighting each other. It goes to a decision. Who's going to get the win? The striker who put out the most, right? That happens in the striking game. But somehow, a lot of judges don't apply this to the ground game. It's driving me nuts. So SILER needs to keep on working once he hits the ground, which he probably will against a great fighter like Palmer.
Palmer wore out his opponents this season with his wrestling. What makes him so hard to control, and can he use that same strategy against SILER this time around?
Oh, yes, he can, because his wrestling is so dominating. He can pretty much do anything. There's not a person, not a fighter that he cannot take down. Now, Palmer needs to do simply what he always does. Strike with his opponent, wait for the perfect moment, and then go for the takedown. From there, work ground and pound, and of course, go for submission. Now, if he feels that SILER is constantly attacking him on the ground, he should do the same thing. So not only defending, he needs to start attacking as well, because if we have judges like they have in Japan, you know, the person who works the most on the ground, even when he's on his back, is going to be awarded with the victory. So he cannot take that risk being on top and riding it out, because if SILER is constantly attacking him, he needs to start working, not only defending, but immediately start attacking as well.
All right, now to the PFL Lightweight Championship. #1 seed Natan Schulte. He is out of Brazil and will face 7th seed Rashid Magomedov. He is a boxer who has 9 knockouts in his career, a 22-2-1 career record. missed the start of the PFL season with a rib injury and then just barely made the playoffs as the 7th seed, but the Russian made it count once he was back in the bracket, advancing with a decision and knockout in the playoffs. He'll now face the top-seeded Schulte. The Brazilian specializes in judo and is 14-3-1 in his career. He had a huge regular season but hasn't been as dominant in the playoffs, advancing on a tiebreaker and a split decision. Okay, boss, Schulte had some narrow escapes in his last few fights, so what does he have to do to regain his regular season form?
Well, I think that Schulte might have played it safe in the playoffs. You know, more fighters were doing that since they had to fight twice on one night, in one night. And they had to make sure, of course, that they won that very first fight. So hopefully that was the reason that he really didn't go for the finish. I mean, if you really try to finish your opponent, you put every effort in it, you always leave some openings open for your opponent to counter. So that's not a good thing. So you want to play it safe and slowly but surely work towards a victory at least. Now, Schulte needs to press the action in this fight because he's fighting, again, a great striker, a better striker than himself, although Schulte, though, has knockout power in his hands. Now, Schulte already likes to fight like that, pressing the action, always coming forward, because once there is a clinch, he can use his crazy judo skills to take his opponent down. Judo takedowns are different than wrestling takedowns. So he might surprise his opponent with like a leg sweep or an ushimata, which is like a hip throw. It can be very confusing for a fighter if he never trained for judo takedowns to suddenly be in that situation. Now, once he has a takedown, of course, use ground and pound and or submissions. Now, he needs to overload his stamina, though, because in his last fight against Wade, we saw that he was getting tired. Sure, it was a super high-paced fight, but I guarantee you that his opponent was looking at that fight. He said, you know what? I'm going to load up on stamina. It's going to be 5 rounds anyway, you know, so I can really press the action, see if I can get him tired, and then just, of course, capitalize on that.
What will it take for Magomedov to win the title?
Well, Magomedov is, like I said already, the better striker of the two. So I believe that he is going to try to stand and not go to the ground. Why would he? I mean, if he knows he's the better striker and he's better there, keep it on the feet. But again, as always, he might throw in some takedowns here and there just to confuse Schulte. But I would watch out with that because close by, you know, if you go for a takedown, there's always the guillotine choke attack, the counter that he can use, right? Now, he needs to keep Schulte on the outside of his strikes. Use a lot of angles, be light on the feet. This is very important so you can move in and out and to the sides and just throw a lot of straight strikes to keep Schulte away from him. Now, hopefully one of those can daze Schulte or maybe even stop him, but even when he can't, then at least he's going to outwork him and he's going to win the fight by decision. And Schulte, by the way, he's never been finished in his career. So he's going to be a tough cookie to break, whether on the ground or on his feet.
Let's talk light heavyweights now. Two fighters of conflicting styles will duke it out for the title at MSG. Top-seeded submission specialist VINNY Magalesh enters the decagon to face the number 6 seed, Sean the Real OC O'Connell. Magalesh, a former Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion who defeated each of the 4 opponents this season he faced in less than 2 minutes. Of his 18 career wins, 14 have come by submission. This season has been a comeback story for the 35-year-old O'Connell, who returned to the fight game after a 1.5-year layoff. It actually fought and called fights for you, all as a broadcaster in the same night several times this season. The American has shown a lot of power, scoring 2 KOs in his 4 PFL matches. He holds a 20-10 career record, 11 of those wins ending in a knockout. So Magalesh has made quick work of all of his opponents so far. What's the key for him to make it 5 for 5 in the PFL season and claim the title?
Well, he's going to need to keep doing what he's doing. But let me go over that one more time. All right, Brendan? And he spent, like you said, the least amount. I did the math, and I believe it's 6 minutes and 29 seconds.
Wow.
He spent in the cage for 4 fights. It's 1.5 minutes each. He was fighting like it was double parked, right? That's how fast it went. And you know what? He told me that in the 2.5 months leading up to the playoffs, he only took 2 Sundays off. Think about this. 75 days. He took 2 days off. The rest of the week, the rest of those days, he was training 2 or 3 times a day. And yes, that is how you get better. And that's why we see results like this. Now, he needs to do what he always does. He needs to use his striking skills, which he does have, because a lot of people think he's just a submission guy. Oh, no, no, no. When he dropped Brandon Halsey with a high kick and then stopped him with some ground and pound, boom, there we saw that he has great striking skills as well. Oh, just before I say that, you were talking about he had these 14 or 13 submission victories. This guy had 18 fights and only one fight went to a decision. That means he's always looking for a finish. So use the striking skills. Set up the right moment to try to take your opponent to the ground. But you also have to watch out with this, because he's a guy who, when he has a clinch, he will simply jump guard. Not a lot of fighters do that. Only when you're very confident about your submission skills and reversal skills. So we literally, in the clinch, he will jump up in the guard, pull the opponent to the ground, then he will reverse him and go for a submission, or he will go for a submission right away. Or actually, when you think about it, what he did with Raheem Cleveland, he was in the clinch, he jumped to a triangle, flying triangle, got him in the triangle hold, took him down, and finished him up with a Kimura. It was just crazy, but it means don't clinch with MAGALHAES. Now, you already mentioned the submission skills, but again, I want to mention that this guy is a finisher. Only one fight of his 18 in total went to a decision. So expect another finish in this fight, although, you know, we can't always count Sean O'Connell out, of course.
So with all that said, what does O'Connell have to do to survive Magomed's submission game and then walk out of MSG with the belt?
You know, that's first of all, I want to come back to the thing that you said, and maybe the people at home didn't really know what you were saying, because he did this in one night. Okay, so you have to understand this. For the regular season, Sean O'Connell did the first part of the show as a commentator. Then he took his clothes off, goes to the dressing room, changed into his fighting outfit, and he fought on the same night. It's just crazy when you think about that. I wouldn't do it, but actually for him, it worked. They didn't let him do it to the playoffs, though, because he had to fight two fights in one night. Now, this guy is like Steven SILER. Every time when you think the fight is over, boom, he comes back. His first fight against Ronnie Marks, for instance, he got hit so many times, the referee almost stopped the fight. But no problem. Second round, Sean comes back, drops him by knockout. Shmelino Rama, he's one of the best strikers in the game that we have. He's picking him apart all over the place. He's really in trouble. Kaboom, out of the blue, a left hook, and stops Rama. So can he do the same thing in this fight, where submission attempts are going to come at him? No, not striking this time, but a lot of submission attempts, because he has been submitted twice in his career, although the last submission loss was about 10 years ago. Now, this means that the best way for O'Connell is to keep the fight on the feet, and that means that he can't clinch with MAGALHAES. I just talked about he's going to jump guard. He needs to be on the balls of his feet. He needs to move in and out after every striking exchange, never straight backwards when he gets pressed, because then there will still be a takedown, always moving to the sides. And I believe with the great Jeremy Horn in his corner, yeah, I think they worked on that. Footwork, being light on the feet, because that's something he didn't do in the past, and he really is going to need it in this fight.
All right, time for the big boys. The PFL Heavyweight Championship. This is the only matchup that doesn't feature a top seed. Number 3 seed Felipe Lins battles the only 8 seed remaining, Josh Cuddly Bear Copeland. Also known as Monstro, Lins stopped all 3 of his opponents in the PFL this season. 2 by KO, 1 by submission. The Brazilian is 13-3-0 in his career with 7 KOs. Copeland has been on a remarkable run in the PFL, barely making the playoffs with a decision win in his last regular season fight. The American then took out the number 1 seed in the first round of the playoffs and had one of the knockouts of the year in his semifinal win over Alex Nicholson. So, Bas, what has to happen for Lins to come out on top and be a champion?
Well, like you already said, this guy is good everywhere, right? Knocking out Alex Nicholson, knocked out in the second round. Then he's fighting his teammate, Kyle Alankar, submitted him by way of submission. So we know he can do it all. Then he knocked out Jake Rashid. I mean, this guy, like you said, he is on the roll. Now, in Copeland's last 2 fights, we saw Copeland coming forward the whole time. And this means that Lins is going to need footwork as well. He's normally a little flat-footed on his feet, and he's a really great striker, but he needs to change that. He needs to be on the balls of his feet. Now, I wouldn't clinch with Copeland if I was Lins. I would use footwork, angles, keep Copeland on the outside of his strikes. Now, I also mentioned in the other fights as well, it's always good to throw in some takedowns here and there, or at least fake a few takedowns to keep your opponent guessing. And since Lins has 4 submission victories and never lost by way of submission, maybe he can actually go for a takedown and see if he can submit Copeland. Because since Copeland has 2 submission losses on his resume, although the last submission loss was about 11 fights ago. So he hasn't been submitted for quite a while. What I'm saying is this, though. Lins can either stand on his feet, use a lot of footwork on the balls of his feet and angles because Copeland will be in his face, or he can simply go for a takedown and see if he can pull off a submission.
Cuddly Bear, Copeland is the lowest seed left. What does he have to do to cap off this miracle run and win the PFL heavyweight title?
Man, I love the Cuddly Bear, man. What a story this guy is. His first fight of the season, he lost against Jack May by TKO. Then he beat Sean Jordan by decision. And then he beat Francimar Barroso, the #1 seed that you just talked about. And he went on to fight Alex Nicholson, also you just talked about, with that highlight knockout that he had. So this guy made a complete transformation. Before the playoffs, he had about 2.5 months, right? And he said, you know what I started to do? I started working on all the things that I lacked the most. And I hired a dietitian to watch my food. And dude, when you hear me commentating about him, when he came to fight, he looked like a complete new fighter. Suddenly he had hand movement, something he never had. Footwork, something he didn't really have. In and out moving, great distance. It was insane to watch. Everything that he never had before, we saw him doing in that. So if Copeland makes another growth spurt like he did in these last 2.5 months now, like he did before, ooh, we're going to see a very dangerous fighter. He needs to come forward, like I said, because Lins is the better striker than him, but he also needs to be ready for counters from his opponent. So when he throws a combination, move back, let the opponent's counter miss, and then go back forward again. But you can never give Lins too much space because then again, he's got you on the outside, and that could be dangerous for him. I already explained what pushing a great fighter backward is going to do. It will make it harder for Lins to throw with power and use his body weight while punching Josh Copeland. Now, Copeland, like I said, needs to be lighter on his feet in order also to stop the takedown attempts that might be coming from Lins.
Last but not least, the welterweights step into the decagon to fight for the title. It's #1 seed Ray Cooper III versus the #3 seed Magomedkerimov for the PFL welterweight championship. Cooper is the definition of a knockout specialist, finishing all 4 of his PFL fights this season by KO. 12 of the 17 career wins he has have ended with his opponent on the mat. The Hawaiian finished the 3 of his fights this season in the first round, including an 18-second win over Pavlo Kush. Magomedkerimov also sports a 4-0 PFL record this season and is on a 7-fight win streak. He has a professional record of 22-5-0. 10 KOs included. The Russian will have a size advantage in this fight, standing at 6'1". Cooper is coming in at 5'7". And get this, Magomedkerimov has never been knocked out. So, Bas, can Cooper win the title and be the first to ever knock out Magomedkerimov?
Yes, Cooper can do that because this guy has great power. Even Jake Shields said that he never felt power like that. And you have to understand that Shields fought the very best competition on the planet. So for him to say that, that means Cooper has a lot of power. Now let's talk about the last 4 fights really fast, okay? Because they're all knockouts. Shields, first time he fought, 2nd round knockout. Then his next 3 fights, Pavlo Kush, you mentioned it already, the 18-second knockout. Jake Shields again, who he knocked out. And then Henderson Ferreira, which was a very important fight to him because that was the last guy he lost to before entering the season. Everybody thought that Ferreira was going to do it again. But no, he's got knocked out, knocked all his 3 last opponents out in the first round, as you mentioned. 12 minutes and 5 seconds. I did the math on this one as well. That's about 3 minutes per fight. That's also not so bad. Now, Cooper loves to fight. And trust me, he will come and bring it. His style is very much like Mike Tyson, only he has great wrestling skills as well. He will come non-stop forward and be in the face of Magomedkerimov. And he needs to do that because I had mentioned before, pushing a great striker backwards, it will take the power out of his strikes. The only downside of a style like this is that you need a lot of stamina. And since this is a 5-round fight, all these fights are 5-round fights, load up on stamina. I would even think, if I was Cooper, to go for takedowns because he did that with Jake Shields as well. And everybody was amazed by it because Jake Shields is such a great submission fighter, yet he took him to the ground. But he would stand in the guard and he would just use his ground and pound, which is ruthless as well. On his feet, he's ruthless. On the ground, he is ruthless. And if he mixes in those wrestling skills, now his opponent has to be afraid of what is it going to be again. It's a guessing game. It's a takedown and his wrestling. That's a big power to have going into a fight.
What does Magomedkerimov have to do to avoid Cooper's knockout potential, he just spoke on it, and cap off his 2018 with the welterweight championship?
Well, Magomedkerimov needs to use his huge reach advantage that he has and needs to keep Cooper on the outside from his punches. So a lot of straight punches. Keep him away, keep him away. Never go straight backwards because then Cooper can simply run forward and he will still have him. So always moving to the side and angles. Also, when you pick an opponent apart, Cooper is the kind of guy like a Mike Tyson again, who starts timing those things and then suddenly he comes forward. So he cannot only come forward and keep him on and try to keep him on the outside, he needs to in and out move as well. Footwork, angles, like I said, when you move backwards, when you move back, always go to the side. The head movement needs to be there. Everything he needs to do perfect in order to stop the onslaught that is going to come at him. I would even fake or even try to go for some takedowns, because he does that, then it might stop Cooper from moving forward, because if you just move forward, you're planting your feet. The worst thing is to plant your feet if somebody wants to take you down. So hopefully, if he fakes a takedown or actually tries a few takedowns, that will stop Cooper from just coming forward the whole time and be in his face.
There you have it. What better way to ring in the new year than to witness 6 fighters become millionaires, 6 championship fights, all on the same night. It's happening on New Year's Eve at the Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden in New York City. The Professional Fighters League's 2018 World Championship, live on NBC Sports Network, December 31st, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get involved on the action with the PFL 2018 World Championship Pick'em contest on DraftKings. Answer 4 questions about each fight, rack up the points, and bring home the $20,000 grand prize. For Bas Rutten, I'm Brendan GLASHEEN. This is Matchups Breakdown. We'll see you at the Decagon.